Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast. We are your hosts, Derek Larger and Chase Steffes. And guys, we have a pretty cool episode today. We're going to talk about the divisions and their drafts and kind of give our grades as to how we feel about them. You know, now that it's a week out of, the draft and everything going on. So we'll do that. But first, we have one thing that we need to talk about, and it's really the only major news story in the NFL right now. And apparently there is an ESPN report that came out yesterday stating the fact that there's supposedly evidence to prove that the Washington Commanders called Andrew Luck about a potential return to the NFL. Now, Chase, we were talking about this morning, and we can talk more about it because we kind of went over the nitty-gritty details. But right now, as it stands, was they supposedly called Andrew Luck about this return. There's no definitive proof yet, but there is things going around that if they did, in fact, do that last year, that means they would have been tampering with a former player that was still technically under contract with the Indianapolis Colts, and that could get the Washington Commanders in trouble. And I can pull up the Jim Irsay tweet and just to make sure that we have that for us. But what was your reaction to hearing this news?
I mean, my reaction at first was I didn't think that it was tampering because, I didn't really think that it hurt anything just to contact them and talk to him about it. And, then when you looked up the league rules and was looking into it, it showed that is technically tampering and everything, as long as, if he's under contract and everything. But then it kind of begged the question of like, how is that technically tampering? Because it was quite a few, like the same thing happened a few years back when the Buccaneers were contacting Rob Gronkowski and asking him if he wanted to go to Tampa Bay when he was still under contract with the Patriots. All they were doing is getting in contact. They weren't actually asking him if he wanted to come over quite yet. So that wasn't technically tampering. Neither was the Broncos contacting Sean Payton.
It could be based off of the CBA's rules. The CBA has changed frequently over the last several years, so that might be one of the reasons why maybe that wasn't a problem from before. But obviously, since the CBA has changed since then, that might be more of a rule. But basically, the rule in the gist of it states is that any player who is under contract is not allowed to have anyone from an outside team contact them without contacting the team prior. Why? This man over here, guys, this is a man child right here. This is what a man child looks like. Anyways, we're talking about just the situation of obviously they didn't contact the Indianapolis Colts because because Jim Irsay even tweeted it out. I mean, I can just show this on screen right here as it stands. I mean, when you look at the tweet, if any NFL team attempted to contact Andrew Luck or any associate of him to play for their franchise, it would be a clear violation of the league's tampering policy. So they would have had to have contacted the Indianapolis Colts first in an attempt to actually talk with Andrew Luck. Now, the first things first, which is the hilarious part of this, Chase, is that Andrew Luck is not returning. Andrew Luck has made it abundantly clear that he has no intention of coming back. He is enjoying the life that he has. He's a millionaire now. He's a dad. He's got time to be at home and, spend time with his kid and do things that he actually enjoys. So, being a husband, being a father, doing all of those things. So first of all, for the Washington Commanders to even do anything like that is hilarious. But then again, I wouldn't put anything past what Dan Snyder had to do from before. So that doesn't surprise me at all. And the reason why I see Jim Irsay doing this is because, again, this was under Dan Snyder's control. So Dan Snyder would have had something to do with this. And Jim Irsay has made it abundantly clear he does not like Dan Snyder from, you remember the meetings that they had when they were talking about the illegal activity Dan Snyder was involved in. Jim Irsay was the lead guy on telling everyone, we got to make sure we get this right and that we don't let this dude just walk off scot-free. So, I mean, if in fact it is proven, because again, the Colts could just move on and just say they just don't want to do anything with this, or if they do in fact find evidence that proves that they did actually tamper, then the Colts could take it up with the NFL and the Commanders could lose a first-round draft pick for next year based off of the actions that they made in 2022. I mean, think of how weird that would be if something like that were to happen.
I mean, we already saw it with the Miami Dolphins when they tried to do the illegal tampering period by getting Tom Brady. I mean, Stephen Ross got fined $5 million, was suspended until mid-October, and the Dolphins lost a first-round draft pick this past year. That's why there was only 31 first-round picks instead of 32 because of that. And that's why there was 252 or 59 picks instead of 262 total. So, I mean, Jim Irsay could definitely pursue this, but I don't know. They're in the middle of the transition of trying to sell the team to a third party, or to the owner of the 76ers, which honestly, I'm surprised that has not gone through yet. I don't know where the negotiations and stuff are with that, but at this point in time, I really do think that they should just, Dan Snyder should just sell the team, take the $6 billion and run away with it.
Yeah, 100%. He needs to get the hell out of Dodge is what he needs to do, because that dude's got a lot of heat coming his way for a lot of bad things that the Commanders have done. But we'll have to see if Indianapolis decides to pursue that and if we find out if they actually did tamper. But anyways, going off of that news, guys, we're going to go ahead and now move into our draft grades for the divisions. And we're going to start with the NFC South, where that obviously is with the Panthers, the Buccaneers, the Falcons, and the Saints. We're going to start here with the Carolina Panthers. Chase, why don't you go ahead and take it away here?
Yeah, starting off in the first round, the Panthers chose Bryce Young. Obviously, in my opinion, they should have chose C.J. Stroud, but you know what? The Panthers thought that they had their guy. They did all that they could to build around him, getting Adam Thielen this offseason, DJ Chark, bringing in Miles Sanders, and then not to mention they got a couple weapons, or they got like a weapon during the draft in Jonathan Mingo, which is now their second round pick. Jonathan Mingo was a very talented, underrated wide receiver, and then his draft stocks slowly started rising towards the end of, or towards draft week and when it first started. And then you go to the third round, they get DJ Johnson out of Oregon, the edge rusher, to pair up with Brian Burns on that defensive line. And then the fourth round, they chose Chandler Zavala, guard out of NC State. Obviously, they want to protect Bryce Young as much as they could. And then rounding out their picks in the fifth round with a steal, in my opinion, they chose safety Jamie Robinson out of Florida State, and pairing him with Jeremy Chin in the back, and then also J.C. Horn in the secondary, I think was a great pickup. But the Carolina Panthers, in my opinion, had a good offseason, had a sneaky good draft with just the 5 picks that they have, because they traded most of their picks to the Chicago Bears, got some in return for the Christian McCaffrey pick that they got, or in McCaffrey trade that they traded to San Francisco. But all in all, not a bad pick. And I think that the Carolina Panthers are poised to have a sneaky good season with all of the coaches that they got there. Frank Reich, Jim Caldwell, Josh McCown as his quarterback coach. Who is their offensive coordinator? It's not Jim Bob Cooter, I think.
No, that's the Colts.
That's the Colts
offensive coordinator. I don't remember who he got. It was somebody good.
Yeah,
I don't remember who.
I can't remember who.
They got somebody.
They
definitely
got somebody good.
I'm gonna look that up because I need to. Yeah, Panthers
offensive coordinator.
Joe Brady. Or no, hold on a second. No, Thomas
Brown.
Thomas Brown.
That's who it is.
Yeah.
Thomas Brown is a coach that Frank Reich ended up, falling in love with later on in the process, and said that he wants to give him a shot at being an offensive coordinator and hoping that the offense could, take off, because he wants him to be able to get a head coaching position later on. Frank said that he's going to call plays at the moment, but looks to turn it over to Brown at some point in time. Derek, what do you think of the Panthers draft and offseason moves?
Well, I mean, from a draft standpoint, their draft was a lot. I mean, they did, obviously, during the span of last season, they traded, and got a second, third, fourth, and sixth round pick out of Christian McCaffrey. So, before they made the trade with Chicago, I mean, they were sitting at pretty much like 10 draft picks. And, they ended up trading, 3 draft picks in this one, and even traded away some in the mid rounds as well to move up in the third round to go and get DJ Johnson.
And they traded up in the second round to get Jonathan Mingo too, if I get
mistaken. They didn't trade.
Oh, that's right.
They acquired the extra second. That was the extra second from they didn't trade away. They traded away their second that was San Francisco's in that Chicago trade, but they kept theirs. That's what they got with Mingo. But obviously they went all in, right, on Bryce Young, who is whether or not he's going to have the same kind of career as CJ Stroud. Bryce Young is the most poised, ready quarterback to go in day one, ready to start in an NFL game from this draft class. So obviously you went and got him. Jonathan Mingo, who, like you said, from the beginning of the process was supposed to be a 4th rounder. And then what we saw in the Senior Bowl, what we saw at the Combine, what we saw at his pro day, everything just kept skyrocketing. The guy has unbelievable tangibles and all of these other things. So when you look at what Carolina did, while Carolina only had 5 picks for this season going into it, I mean, you do have to remember they did a lot in free agency. They did bring in a lot of offensive weaponry. And then they, like you said, went and got a safety that can be great depth for them, an edge guy that can compete right there. And then, having all 5 of these picks are all going to be really great depth for them, or even starters at, on day one. So I think at the end of the day, I'm going to give this a good grade. I'm probably going to give this, I'll probably go with an A- grade. I would have gone A if there was the fact that they, were able to get 1 or 2 more solid picks. But I mean, it was only 5. It was only 5, but they pretty much nailed the 5 picks that they did get. So I'll go with an A-. I'm
going to go with a B+.
You're going to go with a B+?
Yeah, I think that DJ Johnson was not necessarily a need for them, because I know that they picked up a couple people, during free agency for that line. I think that they should have went with a linebacker for that defensive side of the ball rather than a edge rusher. But all in all, I think that they got some solid picks, both for offense and defense to help build that team. So,
yep. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on here. And that moves to the New Orleans Saints, who ended up having 7 picks in this draft. And, they went with a couple of defensive linemen really early. And then, we're pretty spread out the majority of this. Obviously traded for Derek Carr this offseason, so they now have their quarterback of at least the immediate future. They went and got Brian Brzee, the defensive tackle out of Clemson, who was, I believe, was the first defense. No, it wasn't the first defensive tackle. Second defensive tackle.
Third.
Taken. Was he the third?
Third, because Kalijah Kancey.
That's right. Kalijah Kancey went there. Isaiah Foskey, the edge out of Notre Dame, again, a really solid edge there. Went and got Kendre Miller, the running back out of TCU. That was a little bit of a shock. I think there were some running backs ahead of time that really could have went before this, but that was just another shocker. Nick Saldiveri, guard out of Old Dominion in the 4th, Jake Haener, the quarterback out of Fresno State. Now, make fun of that one all you want, but Haener actually, if I'm not mistaken, they said actually had the second best cognitive test of any quarterback in the whole draft class. So he's a very smart kid. And while he didn't play at elite level competition, he dominated it at Fresno State. He really did a fantastic job, was accurate, was smart. So doesn't surprise me that a quarterback like him would get into there. Obviously, they think highly of him to take him in the 4th round and to have him potentially behind Derek Carr going forward. Jordan Howden, the free safety out of Minnesota. And then to round it out, A.T. Perry in the 6th round, the wide receiver out of Wake Forest. So, I mean, what do you think of the Saints draft here?
I'm going to give this one an A-, just because if people thought I was crazy giving them an A-, but if you look at their team, they got rid of Marcus Davenport because they didn't really see a whole bunch out of him. They got Cam Jordan on the defensive side of the ball. He's not getting any younger. You're building the defensive line with young guys, getting out from underneath a lot of the cap space that they've been in over the years, and just starting off with the defensive line and building that interior. Brian Brazee was probably the second best defensive tackle in this draft, in my opinion. And he fell all the way to 29. Yeah. That's insane. And then Isaiah Foskey, an underrated edge out of Notre Dame. I expected him to be a borderline 1st rounder, maybe even early 3rd rounder. But the fact that he went 40 overall and was able to fall to the Saints, good steal. Kendre Miller was a good pickup for them because who knows how long Alvin Kamara is going to play this year. He might be suspended for the first 6 games if the court case goes where it is. So getting a young guy in Kendre Miller, pairing up with Derek Carr, and that offense is going to be great. Their offensive line, they lost an offensive lineman this year, so getting Nick out of Old Dominion was a great choice there. Jake Haener, like you said, had one of the better scores, getting a chance to learn under Carr for the next year or two, and possibly even taking over for him if anything were to happen. And then Howden was an underrated safety going in the 5th round. Most people had him in the 3rd or 4th round going. And then A.T. Perry, a lot of people didn't really talk about A.T. Perry when it came to wide receivers, but he's got the frame, the size, and the build that you're looking for an average wide receiver. And I think that pairing him with Chris Olave and Michael Thomas, having him be that 3rd option would be a phenomenal choice for them, and it gives Derek Carr another weapon to throw to. I think the one thing that I would kind of knock the Saints for is not drafting a tight end.
Yeah, they definitely neglected to go tight end. They waited until the 4th round to actually go and get an offensive lineman. So, I would love to. The only reason I'm going B+ here is just due to the fact that I like the A.T. Perry pick late in the draft. I really think A.T. Perry can be a shooter for them at the end. And obviously double dipping at defensive line for them. I legitimately think they got 2 guys that can, be starters in this league and contributors for a decade, both of them at their respective spots. So I'll only give them a B+ for that. I'm hesitant even to give them that. I just think that there were other opportunities they had to fill some other needs, and they just kind of shot themselves a little bit in the early on. But again, like I said, that's why I'm giving them a B+, because those first 2 picks definitely were very intriguing. All right, well, let's go now to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who ended up having 8 picks in this draft. Started off with Kalijah Kancey, defensive tackle out of Pittsburgh, the Aaron Donald 2.0 prototype that had that huge combine that everybody was talking about. They went and got Cody Mauch, the offensive tackle out of North Dakota State. Yaya Daibi, the defensive end from Louisville. That one was another one that was a dark horse one. Servatia Dennis, linebacker out of Pittsburgh in the 5th round. Also got Payne Durham, tight end out of Purdue. That was an interesting one. Payne Durham was definitely a really cool prospect. Josh Hayes, defensive back out of Kansas State. Trey Palmer, the wide receiver in Nebraska. I was so mad when they picked him because I wanted the Colts to get him. And
you guys got Josh Downs, so don't worry.
Yeah,
about
whatever. Jose Ramirez at edge as well for Eastern Michigan. So, they hit a lot of different things here, Chase, and they needed offensive line and defensive line help. And those first 3 picks, I mean, the majority of their picks went towards fixing those positions. So, I mean, what do you think of Tampa Bay's draft here?
Honestly, they're one of the ones that I'm actually giving an A+ to, because not to mention, just looking at their roster, they've got pretty much a solid core group of guys everywhere. You look at the wide receiver core, they still got Goodwin and Evans, and not to mention another up and coming wide receiver from last year. They decided to get the tight end position covered. They decided to pick the offensive line because I knew that they were missing their offensive lineman. Cody could play tackle, or he can play center. They're more than likely going to probably put him at center and move somebody over to the tackle spot, unless their center came back. Then I could see him playing their left tackle position and whatnot, because they were talking about moving Tristan Wirfs over to the left side, but they should keep him on the right. The Kalijah Kancey pick was the only questionable one because they have Vita Vea and a couple others on the defensive line. They lost Shaquille Barrett, I think. So picking up Yaya Dabi was a good choice. They needed a good linebacker because I know that Devin White wants out, and Levante David also left this offseason. So a linebacker was a need that they really needed. DB, I don't really think that they had really good corners. So addressing a corner late in the draft was pretty good. Trey Palmer is a good underrated wide receiver. And then Jose Ramirez, his draft stock was supposed to be on the rise over the past 2 to 3 weeks before it was on the rise. And, many people thought he would be a 4th or 5th round pick. But the fact that they didn't even have a 4th round pick and they got all of these guys, I'd say their draft was pretty good. Maybe if the lowest I'd give them is an A, but I still think that they covered every positional need, but also not needing to worry about a whole lot. The only thing that they didn't really cover is quarterback, and I think that they're going to wait until next year to
it's probably going to have to be that situation. The only other guy they could have gotten that was ever worth a damn was Will Levis, and obviously every team in the first round missed on this guy because clearly there were some issues there that everybody didn't really like. So I'll give the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'll give them an A-. They had a really good draft, getting position of need help and all of that was really good. And then, hitting on a couple of late rounders and Payne Durham and Trey Palmer, fantastic. And then, overloading on that defensive line. Because like you said, I mean, they're going to be in an issue where, they are missing out on a few guys that they really need to reload on that defensive line. So that was very important for them, and that was a good job by the Buccaneers. And then our last team for the NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons, with their 6 picks. And they had maybe the most surprising pick in the first round, taking Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas, in the first round with the 8th pick. And then in second round went Matthew Bergeron, tackle out of Syracuse. Third round went and got Zach Harrison, the edge rusher out of Ohio State. Fourth rounder got Clark Phillips, the third cornerback out of Utah. DeMarco Helms, the safety out of Alabama. And Gwen, a guard from South Carolina. So, I mean, Chase, I think you and I, when we first were thinking, when we first heard of what the Falcons were doing, we had first thought the Falcons, reached for a bunch of these guys, but then we kind of look back at it and say that Atlanta Falcons actually had a pretty dang good draft.
Mm-hmm. I would honestly go with maybe a B or an A. A would be a little much. I'm going to go with probably a B- on this one because looking at them, they had no 5th or 6th round pick. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 7s that they were working with. I think Bijan Robinson is the best running back prospect since Saquon Barkley. The Falcons are a run-heavy team. I know that it's going to take a lot of pressure off of Desmond Ridder this year. I think that the reason why I'm giving him a B- instead of an A or a B+ or anything is I think that they needed to get one more solid wide receiver. I think that they needed to possibly address the linebacker position because they had Deion Jones, but he's a free agent now. I can't even think of anybody that they got in the offseason to help them out. But other than that, they were building the offensive line. They have been for the past 5 years. Matthew Bergeron was an underrated tackle. Getting Zach Harrison in the 3rd round, I had him late 2nd, early 3rd, so that's great value for their pick. And then Clark Phillips, I had him as a day 2 pick, and he went in day 3 in the 4th round. So the fact that they got him with the 113th pick, that's a great corner to go opposite of AJ Terrell. Not to mention, like I said, they got Jesse Bates in that back half, and they picked up Calais Campbell for that defensive line as well. I would say that they had a solid draft. They like I said, they were missing another possible wide receiver option, a possible linebacker option, and maybe a defensive tackle option. But other than that, I think the picks that they got was great value. And to me, I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna rank these teams. I had it to where I think the Panthers are gonna finish at the top of the division. I think the Saints are gonna finish 2nd in their division. I have the Falcons finishing 3rd and the Bucs finishing last. Now the Bucs may have a better roster and better quarterback than what the Falcons do, but I think that the reason why is Todd Bowles is known to be a terrible head coach. With the Jets, with the Bucs last year, and even when he took over for Tom Brady, look how bad that team was, and you still had Tom Brady on your roster, and you still had the stacked Buccaneers team that they worked with. So I think that, my opinion, I've got the Bucs finishing like in the top 3 like picks for next year. I think that they could have the chance to be the worst team in the league.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I would say from the Falcons standpoint, I give them a B+ too. I really like their first 4 picks. Every single one of them. I think Clark Phillips in that 4th round is a steal. Zach Harrison, I like Zach Harrison. Was never the most productive guy at Ohio State, but he has all the intangibles of, if you can teach him how to use his body and take care of his body, he can be an all-around great defensive end for you. Bergeron as a tackle, a fantastic tackle that can start day 1. And I like Bijan Robinson. Again, hate the fact that he had to go top 10, but then again, that's the situation that the Falcons felt they needed to make. So I'll go with the B+ there as well for the Falcons. Do we want to do another division?
We'll do another division, and then
Which division do we want to go with, huh?
We'll go with the NFC North.
Go in the NFC North.
The NFC
All right, so
North.
which of the teams of the NFC North do you think is going to go number 1?
Like win the division?
Yeah, win the division. Who's going to win that?
The Detroit Lions.
The Detroit Lions.
The Detroit Lions.
All right. I can't wait for when it gets a little closer and we talk about these things and then talk about why that is. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I disagree with you. I fully agree with you that Detroit is going to hands down easily win this division. Easily.
Ooh.
Easily. It's not even going to be a contest. The Lions will have at least a 2-win differential to the second best team in the NFC North this year. Hands down. Hands down. I'm willing to put money on that.
Who do you have going second in the division? I think Chicago.
I most likely think it is still going to be Minnesota. But I could see a situation where the Chicago Bears will be much closer. But and that might be what keeps Minnesota from competing with Detroit and Chicago beating the crap out of each other. But we'll go ahead and we'll say it because we'll kind of mix it up here and there. But
the Vikings in 3rd, and then I got the Packers going in last.
The Packers last, yeah. Yeah, I think everybody's willing to just get rid of Green Bay. All right, let's talk about the Detroit Lions. They had themselves a very interesting draft.
It was interesting.
It was interesting to say the least. And it was hilarious because some people were talking about, did you see on Twitter when people were talking about how, like, when the Colts selected Anthony Richardson, it just didn't look like they were that hyped. And then you saw when the Detroit Lions selected Jamar Gibbs that they were all freaking out, happy.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, if you're getting that hyped, that if you're losing your minds over the fact that you got Jamar Gibbs
Jameer
as your running back, listen, that be as happy as you want to be. That does not make you a Super Bowl team, okay? I'm just saying. And then second of all, the thing is when ESPN showed the highlights of the Indy draft room from that decision, it was at a moment when they were watching the draft. They weren't actually reacting to the decision that they had already made several minutes earlier. So, of course, they painted a picture that was completely wrong. The draft room was insanely happy when they found out that Houston traded back up to number 3 and they were going to be able to get Anthony Richardson. So let's just say that. But then we remember that the Detroit Lions acquired an extra first from the Arizona Cardinals. And they were able to get Jack Campbell, linebacker out of Iowa, then took his teammate next and Sam Laporta, the tight end out of Iowa, and Brian Branch in the second round. There's that dang elf again.
Yes, sir.
And then drafted the backup quarterback, Hendon Hooker, third rounder as well. Got Broderick Martin, defensive tackle out of Western Kentucky. Fifth round went and got Colby Sourcedale, offensive tackle from William and Mary. And then seventh round pick, Antoine Green, wide receiver out of North Carolina. Chase, I mean,
I'm going to give this a B.
Giving this a B?
I'm going to give it a B. I don't have an A for this. They made a few mistakes. Like Jahmyr Gibbs, he was a great running back, but outside of Bijan, there was no other running back taken in the breadsticks.
Cody, get out of here, bro. Go enjoy your birthday. Get the hell out of here. Gosh.
But outside of Bijan, there was no other running back taken in the first round other than Jahmyr Gibbs. And maybe they thought that he wouldn't be there in the second round. I don't know. But that was a reach getting Jahmyr Gibbs. Not saying that he's not a good running back. Happy birthday, Cody. But I'm just saying, like, you had DeAndre Swift on the team. You had a couple others. Yeah, you lost Jamal Williams, but you ended up getting David Montgomery. I think that was a good pickup this offseason. Jack Campbell, the best linebacker in this draft, no question. I don't think that was really a reach. I mean, if they valued him as a first rounder, so be it. But with that 12th pick, you had Christian Gonzalez on the board. You had Joey Porter Jr. on the board. And the fact that you didn't choose a corner is insane. They needed a tight end after getting rid of Hawkinson. And Sam Laporta is a sneaky underrated one that they got. Brian Branch, he's labeled as a corner, but he played safety and he's better at safety. Don't make the same mistake that the Dolphins made with Minka, playing him at corner when he was really a safety and then took off as a safety when he went to the Steelers.
Right.
Don't make that mistake. Play him as a safety. Brian Branch is a lot better at that. Hendon Hooker was a great value pick for them. They actually traded up to get him. And they think that he's the quarterback of the future. I think that with this Lions team, Ben Johnson as the offensive coordinator can get the most out of him. I think that Ben Johnson was the one that fueled getting Hendon Hooker for them, and the reason why it was behind
it makes a lot of sense because Ben Johnson plays a vertical offense, and that is exactly what Hendon Hooker does. That's Hendon Hooker's bread and butter, throwing the ball 50, 60 yards down the field. That's where he shines best, is being able to use that arm.
Yeah, and that's why they got the speed in Jameson Williams and then Anton Green as well. But Broderick Martin, they needed a defensive tackle, a solid piece to help, ensure that defensive line along with Aiden Hutchinson, and then picking up Sorsdale, a backup offensive tackle for offensive line depth. And then Anton Green, like we said, Jameson Williams is going to be out for the first 6 weeks. They're going to need another weapon opposite of Amon-Ra, and having that and Sam Laporta is really going to help out a lot. I think that they had a sneaky good draft. They should have drafted a corner, but I think that that's what they're going to wait until next year to get in stuff, because they realized they had 2 first rounders this year. They realized that they've got Emmanuel Mosley, they've got CJ Gardner-Johnson, they got Cam Sutton. They think that their secondary is set for now. why not wait until next year to get a corner and then also play Hendon Hooker next year, get out from underneath that big contract of Jared Goff's, and maybe even pay a free agent corner that you can bring in and play well with this team.
And I'm going to change what I said before about the New Orleans Saints. I'm moving it down to a B instead of a B plus. This one I'll give a B plus to. I see an argument as to why people want to say A minus. Just because I think of it this way: if those first 2 picks, even those first 3 picks, end up being like the next cornerstone pieces of this franchise, then the Detroit Lions literally just hit this draft out of the park. But I mean, it is the point of us being like, with Gibbs, there was a lot of things that you could have done. First of all, you had DeAndre Swift. Obviously, you traded him away to the Eagles.
They thought he was injury prone. I could see why they got him.
And then they went and got him anyway before you even traded away DeAndre Swift. And then, like you said, there was options that they could have went with him at 18, bar none, and then still could have gotten a Christian Gonzalez at number 12 and gotten that position of need, and who I thought was the best corner in the whole draft to get at that spot. Instead, you let him fall to the New England Patriots. And again, like you said, they probably do presume they have a better secondary than what some people realize, but they don't. There's a lot of unprovenness in that secondary right now.
I wouldn't say unprovenness,
but CJ Gardner-Johnson is one thing, but like obviously Cam Sutton, you gotta figure that out again. And obviously you lost Jeff Okudah, you traded him or let him go, you traded him away. So you're kind of in a situation where I like the Sam Laporta pick. But it was very strange due to the fact that he got taken before Michael Mayer.
I like the Jack Campbell pick because that one was they needed a linebacker. They needed a linebacker badly. They didn't have one. And the weakest point for the Lions last year was their defense. They still went 9-8.
Jack Campbell's the biggest wild card in this whole thing. If Jack Campbell becomes the next great linebacker of the NFL, one of them.
I love them. I think that they had a sneaky good draft, and they got a lot of depth pieces that will probably not start this year, and they can develop and learn, and then they'll start them next year for cap reasons. Like if we want to get out from underneath some big contracts, let them walk and stuff. I think the guys that they got can fill in the spots very nicely, and they can move on. So I think that we did pretty well.
But yeah, Jack Campbell, if he becomes like one of the next best great linebackers in the NFL, then that made it all worth it. It's just, you're stretching with it.
They said that he could cover. He could cover very well. He could go sideline to sideline very well. He's a hard hitter, and it's definitely something that they needed.
He was the second best linebacker in all of college football last year. But I mean, it is one of those situations where, it did feel like a stretch because there wasn't a ton of linebackers in this draft that were really like they were big needs.
There wasn't one that was chosen in the first round outside of Jack.
Right. And then, but outside of that, I love the fact that they were able to get Brian Branch at pick number 45. That is a steal at that spot.
Steal.
And then, obviously, like you said, Hendon Hooker. Who knows if there's one guy that can make something happen with Hendon Hooker, it's Ben Johnson.
Yeah, great offensive mind, great offensive coordinator. He's going to be a hell of a head coach one of these days.
Yep. All right, we move on to the next team, and that is the Chicago Bears, who had themselves a draft. They had 3, 6, 9, 10 picks.
I'm giving them an A plus. A plus.
Hey, we'll see how they looks here. They got a couple of players here. So Darnell Wright, their first pick at pick number 10, which they traded back again with Philly to get one more pick. And they got Darnell Wright, Gervon Dexton Sr., defensive tackle out of Florida in the second, Tyreek Stevenson, cornerback out of Miami, Zach Pickens, defensive tackle out of South Carolina in the third, had 2 fourth-rounders. They got Rashawn Johnson, running back out of Texas, Tyler Scott, wide receiver out of Cincinnati.
A steal.
They got Noah Sewell, linebacker out of Oregon, who many presume was maybe the second best linebacker
Linebacker
in
in the
the whole
draft.
in the whole draft. For
A
some
lot of people did, yeah.
And then it just kind of shows you where everybody felt there was a difference in play. Terrell Smith, cornerback out of Minnesota in the 5th round. Then they had 2 7th rounders, which is Travis Bell, defensive tackle out of Kennesaw State, and Kendall Williamson, defensive back out of Stanford. How are you feeling with this?
I'm giving it an A+. I mean, you look at what Ryan Poles has been able to do with the Chicago Bears. Not only did he get 2 first rounders for this next year, he also got DJ Moore, a great top tier weapon for Justin Fields. He was able to get one of people already assumed that he was the second best tackle in the draft in Darnell Wright, and putting him on the left side to protect Justin Fields. He got Nate Davis in the offseason, who was a guard, a great pickup for them. He also built the linebacker core and getting Edwards and Terrell Edmonds, two decent linebackers right there. Gervon Dexter, who many presumed as a borderline first rounder, and honestly, was one of the better defensive tackles. I thought he was going to fall to the 3rd round for the Browns to get, but the fact that he went in the 2nd, Tyreek Stevenson, an underrated corner as well, pairing him with Kyle Duggar. And then you got Zach Pickens, again, the first pick that they had in the 3rd round, a defensive tackle that many thought would be in the late 3rd, early 4th. Rashawn Johnson, a good backup running back to Bijan. He ended up getting taken by the Bears, and he's going to fill in for David Montgomery quite nicely. Tyler Scott is a speedster. He's going to blow the top off the defense. It'll give Justin Fields a deep threat right there. Noah Sewell, who a lot of people, like we said, thought was going to be one of the better linebackers in the league, in the draft. And I honestly had him really high. I thought he was going to go late 2nd, early 3rd. Scroll down. And, he went to the Bears in the 5th. Terrell Smith, another weapon, a defensive tackle, and Travis Bell. And then Kendall Williamson, another DB. The Bears had a sneaky good draft with everything that they were going to. They got Fields a good deep threat in the wide receiver, got him a guy to protect him, and started building this defense like I said they would, because I knew that they were going to go probably offense for their first 2 picks. They didn't. They went offense for their first pick, defense for their next few, and then rounded it out with a couple offensive pieces and then defense for the rest of the draft. They were building that side of the ball. And then next year with their 2 first rounders, I bet you they're going to build the offensive line and try to build the offense in general around Fields for next year as well. So I think that the Bears had an A+ draft, and these picks right here, if they can all develop properly, the Bears are going to give the Lions a run for their money in the next couple years for that top of the division.
I'm willing to go an A- here for the Bears. I do. The more I see the Darnell Wright one, the more I kind of understand it, because Darnell Wright was a better run blocking offensive tackle than what Broderick Jones was, and a couple other things. And that's the system in which Chicago's trying to run right now, is a run heavy type of offense. And Darnell Wright's more of a mauler, so I understand it. And the only issue I had is, of all these picks, that's the only time they address the offensive line. It's the only time. And again, talking about it all season long last year, how the offensive line for the Chicago Bears over the last few years has been crap. And yet they only invested 1 draft pick into it. Now, I know there's still free agency left. There's still opportunities to potentially go out and get some guys. But
they did get Nate Davis, one of the better guards in the free agency.
It's just kind of one of those things where I felt like they needed a much bigger higher upgrade with a couple of these guys, and especially with some of these players in the 5th round that were still falling. You talk about Luke Weipler, talk about Alawatami, who both fell to the 5th and 6th rounds, to be able to see that and didn't do anything with it. I mean, Derek, why do you hate me? What do you mean, Cody? What do you mean? What are you talking about? Why do you hate me? I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm sure he'll tell me in a minute. But obviously they overloaded on the defensive line, especially the interior defensive line help. They got a couple different cornerbacks in this draft, so overloaded in the secondary. So, I mean, we saw in free agency, they pretty much went over like insane on the linebackers, went and got 2 guys on almost max contracts on linebacker, and then still adding Noah Sewell in there, which is a great depth piece for them.
Great.
Obviously, they got their right tackle, or I think their right tackle of the future. They got a good depth and a couple other things. Dang it, Cody, shouldn't you be drunk tossing back a bunch of root beers? I like Tyler Scott in the 4th round. That's a good wide receiver. That's a burner. I just don't think I'm blown away with any of these picks. I like the depth that they added, the positions that they did, but I didn't think that they really went over the top with any of the guys that I thought they should have gotten, and potentially missing out on specifically interior offensive line help too. So that's my thought on it. But again, still an A-. Minnesota, the other one. Minnesota is the next one, and they went first pick was Jordan Addison, wide receiver out of USC. Didn't have a 2nd round pick. They went with a 3rd rounder in Mekhi Blackman, cornerback out of USC. 4th rounder, Jay Ward, cornerback out of LSU. 5th rounders, 2 of them, they had Jacqueline Roy, defensive tackle out of LSU. 5th round as well, got Jaron Hall, quarterback out of BYU. And then their last pick in the 7th round was Dwayne McBride. Now I'll just go ahead and say it off the top of the board. I'm going to give this my worst grade yet. And I'm giving this a B- at best.
I'm giving it a C+.
I like the Jordan Addison pick. Obviously you obviously have the best wide receiver in the NFL right now in Justin Jefferson. And I think Jordan Addison complements what Adam Thielen once was, a route technician that can get open, doesn't have tremendous speed, but he gets open and he makes plays. But outside of that, there isn't a lot of these picks that just make me go, wow, they really improved their team. They really didn't do a lot to me that says, Mekhi Blackman, I like. But outside of that, obviously Jaron Hall is one thing. Cause so that just means you're getting a backup for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And then the rest of these guys, I mean, you double dipped a corner in the 3rd and 4th round when you had other needs that you had. Obviously you need cornerbacks, but I mean, by the time
they got Andrew Booth last year too, and he didn't even get a chance to play much.
Mm-hmm. And then of course, I mean, defensive line help. I mean, they only drafted 1 and decided to go quarterback and running back with their last 2 picks. So at best, B- for me when it comes to the Vikings, only because I see Jordan Addison being a starter right away and Mekhi Blackman having a role just simply because they're that deprived of corner right now.
I'm going to give this like a C+ at best, maybe even just a regular C. I need a root beer right now.
I need a root beer too, bro.
But the reason why I'm giving them such a low grade is, Jordan Addison's a great pick because obviously you need a good wide receiver opposite of Justin Jefferson. But outside of that, why? Like you look at the picks that they got in the 3rd. They didn't have a 2nd rounder. That's okay, but you get Mekhi Blackman, which could be a contributor on the defensive side of the ball. I know that I've been talking to a lot of Vikings fans who a lot of them are sensitive because they're like, oh, well, our defense was bad last year. They just needed an upgrade on defense. Are they really bad, or was it just your defensive coordinator was bad? Because the Browns had the same issue. Like, we didn't have a bad defense. It's just our DC was bad. But then we upgraded.
And their defense is bad. Their defense is bad.
Well,
I mean, they've got a few guys there that could do something, but
who?
Or for Minnesota, we talk about, obviously Kendricks is gone now. Danielle Hunter, who, we know can be a really good player, but has, continued to get hurt a lot.
I know, but if you get the right DC in there, they could turn almost nothing into something. But I am saying, like, their defense was, they needed a lot of good pieces, but double dipping at corner, like you said, was kind of a questionable pick. It was a questionable pick. And then also Jaquelin Roy. Like, I know that you wanted a defensive tackle and everything. You lost Alvin Tomlinson. That's fine. But, I'm giving this a low grade because I think that they should have addressed quarterback sooner. They don't have Kirk Cousins after next year. They signed him to a 1-year contract, and that was it. I think next year's his last year. So you've got to address quarterback of the future after that. And Kirk Cousins is 34 years old and taking most of your cap space up. So you're going to need to address quarterback. Did they address the linebacker position? No, they didn't even address linebacker. And they drafted a running back in the 7th round, which, if you're planning on trading Dalvin Cook, that's fine. But you didn't address
a 7th rounder.
Yeah.
Though,
you didn't address a lot of the big key needs, like a linebacker, a future quarterback, a safety, you don't even have that. So I think the Vikings, in my opinion, had one of the worst drafts outside of the first 2 picks.
All right, and then we go to Green
Holy
Bay,
cow.
who has had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 picks in this draft.
Jesus
I think that's the most of this draft. The only reason I know is because Indianapolis had 12, and that was the most for Indy in the modern draft era. So we got a lot to cover on this one.
Jesus Christ.
First, they went with Lucas Van Ness, linebacker out of Iowa, although he's pretty much an edge rusher.
Yeah.
Luke Musgrave, a tight end out of Oregon State in the 2nd round.
Needed because they lost Robert Tonyan.
And then their other 2nd round pick was Jaden Reed, wide receiver out of Michigan State.
She's good, Cody. She's ornery, but doing very, very well.
I don't think his plumbing can handle that after draft weekend. Thanks, peanut butter. AKA my best friend. Tucker Kraft. So they double dipped at tight end out of South Dakota State. Got Colby Wooden, linebacker out of Auburn, who again is another edge guy.
He's a defensive tackle, is what they labeled him as.
Right. And then that Sean Clifford pick, which is hilarious to me. Dontavian Wicks, wide receiver out of Virginia. Carl Brooks, linebacker out of Bowling Green, which is hilarious because, again, he's a defensive tackle.
Freaking steal.
I don't understand why they keep labeling defensive tackles as linebackers, but we're going to go with it. Carrington Valentine, cornerback out of Kentucky. Lou Nichols III, running back out of Central Michigan. Anthony Johnson Jr., safety out of Iowa State. Grant Dubose, wide receiver out of Charlotte. I probably would go with I'll probably go A here.
I'm going to go A+.
I'm going to go A because, look, it's 13 picks. I'm not going to know every one of these guys, and there might be a bunch of them that don't hit. But first of all, to get yourself 13 picks gives you more chances to hit on a guy. And then Lucas Van Ness, fantastic player. Really like him. Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft double dipping at tight end. You're trying to get some weapons for Jordan Love, and you even went more weapons with that Jaden Reed pick, which I thought was very fantastic.
Speedster, yeah.
Obviously, you lost out on Jonathan Mingo in that spot, but the receivers were going early. Once that onslaught of wide receivers went in that late burst,
to back,
everyone started taking wide receivers there, so you wanted to get them quickly. I like Colby Wooden. I think that's good depth at the defensive line. Carl Brooks, I think, has the potential to be a guy that could start day one potentially. And then, of course, getting more of this, just getting more depth at all these different positions. I think Green Bay just did a good job of trading back, getting all these picks, increasing their odds of potentially getting more picks in that way. And I liked there's at least 5 picks in this draft that I think could be day one starters that can go out there and perform for Green Bay. So I'm going to give him an A.
I'm giving him an A+. I mean, you look at, just going through their picks real quick, like Luke Musgrave, they needed a defensive end. They didn't really have another solid defensive end prospect on their defensive line. I know that they had the Smith guys for a little while. They had Rashawn Gary, but it was needed. Then Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. Musgrave and Kraft were probably tight end 4 and 5 in this draft, is what a lot of people said. And they got both of them. Getting rid of Robert Tonyan, double dipping at tight end. We know that fucking McCarthy loves his tight ends, and he's the one that's calling the offense this year. Or not McCarthy, LaFleur. He loves his tight ends. We know that's what he likes to run with Jordan Love. They think that Love is going to take the next step forward with the more weapons that he's got. You got a speedster in Jaden Reed. Colby Wooden is a good defensive tackle prospect. Sean Clifford was, a risky, surprising pick. Dontavian Wicks, wide receiver 4, in my opinion. Carl Brooks, that is a guy that is going to be a shocker. If they can develop him properly and get him playing, that is a steal in the 6th round. I had Carl Brooks going in the 3rd round, maybe the 4th. The fact that they got him in the 6th round, that is a steal. Yep. And then going all the way down, we talked about the other picks, but going all the way down to the Anthony Johnson Jr. pick, that safety out of Iowa State, he is an underrated safety, and I had him going in the 4th or 5th round, and they got him in the 7th round with one of the last few picks that they had. And the fact that he fell that far, I think that once again, he'll be a day 1 starter because of how good he is. But I think that if you develop him properly, he could be one of the better safeties in the league. And then the Grant DuBois, I think your wide receiver core is going to be good now with Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson. You're going to have probably Jaden Reed as your 3rd option, Dontavian Wicks as your 4th, and then Grant DuBois as your 5th. And after going back and watching the Grant DuBois highlights, because I thought that's who the Browns were going to choose in one of the later rounds. This guy's a big body wide receiver, usually high points the ball really well, knows how to make spectacular plays, and is quick on his feet. I think that they got a good pick picking him up. So all in all, I think the Packers had a good draft, but the one thing is that I have with them going 4th in the division is the Lions had a great offense last year. They needed a defense to boot. They ended up finishing in 2nd place in that division, right in front of the Packers, I think. And I think now they're going to take that next step forward. The thing that the Vikings had, I think they took a step back because they didn't address a lot of the needs. The Bears, if they're working around Justin Fields and they're willing to give him the weapons and stuff that they needed, Justin Fields is going to take a next step forward and show everybody why he is as good as a pick as we both think that he is, and as good as a quarterback. And I think that the one question mark that we have with the Packers is how well is Jordan Love actually going to play?
Yeah, exactly. It's just all going to be a matter of, how good is Jordan Love? I mean, nowadays, again, we were talking about it, we could talk about what he did at Utah State and all that. And we could talk about how, Green Bay maybe didn't just give him a good chance because of obviously Aaron Rodgers being there, but
he signed another 1-year contract. So they got him for 2 years.
Yep. So now's the chance to see if Jordan Love is actually the answer. And then we can rightfully state whether or not Green Bay botched its opportunity to, get another chance at a Super Bowl run when they could have went and got, some better players in that 2019 draft instead of drafting a guy who should have never been drafted in the first place.
Are we going to see a Jordan Love being a quarterback, or like a Super Bowl winning quarterback, playing 10, 15 years at Green Bay and then going to the Jets in 15 years?
Jordan Love's next destination. That's where he's going. He's going to he is definitely going to the New York Jets to follow Aaron Rodgers right after Aaron Rodgers leaves. That is definitely going to be a thing. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. We had fun. A lot of good conversation. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Bye, Cody.